Just a week after the Paris terror attacks, Muslim leaders from across America hold a conference in Texas. Their goal? To, quote, stand with the Prophet Muhammad in honor and respect. They seek to combat what they call Islamophobes in America. With me is Christiane Backer, who at the height of her career is one of Europe's leading pop culture icons converted to Islam. She is a speaker at the conference. And Raquel Evita Saraswati, an American Muslim writer and activist who focuses on women's rights, democracy, and individual freedom. All right, good evening. Christiane, you say the goal of the conference is to discuss the mercy, gentleness, and compassion of Muhammad. If that's the case, why are people in Paris killing in the name of Allah?
Very good question, because they don't follow Prophet Muhammad's teachings. What they did is a crime against humanity that defies all Islamic values and Prophet Muhammad's teachings.
What is the purpose of the conference?
The conference is to celebrate Prophet Muhammad's life. He was born in this month, so it's a celebration of his life, his mercy, his teachings, and it is also to raise funds for a media response center in order so that Muslims can respond in a professional manner in the media when they're attacked in an Islamophobic way, because there's a lot of, unfortunately, Islamophobia is on the rise. So we Muslims, instead of being radicalized, we should be responding in a professional manner, and that's why we're raising funds.
What will you say, instead of being radicalized? Are you suggesting that there is a reason to be radicalized, and you are then now, going to bring in the professionals to speak on behalf of Muslims?
Well, unfortunately, one of the consequences of Islamophobia and constant Muslim bashing in the media is that youth gets radicalized, or they disengage, they leave their faith behind. So there is a problem and a great sadness amongst the vast majority of the Muslims. So
but it seems that the only people who are being bashed are the people who are being killed in the name of Allah. The bashing is going from a Muslim toward the innocents as opposed to the innocents toward the Muslims. Raquel, why don't you join in on this? What do you think the answer to that is?
The answer to why you
Raquel, these horrible.
Raquel, go ahead.
The answer to why Muslims are radicalized?
Yes, there was a suggestion that they're going to raise money so that they have professionals who can respond on behalf of Muslims.
In the media,
right.
Yes, in the media.
Look, I think that a lot of the public discourse on Islam is often on. May I? Thank you, Salam. I think that a lot of the discourse that happens around Islam and Muslims is not so helpful sometimes in the media, and it would be useful to have Muslims willing to speak out against the theopolitical ideology that we saw attack in Paris. It would be very valuable to have dissident Muslims have more airtime. I would hope that the conference focuses on how we as Muslims can look inward and address radicalization problems within our own community, including issues like violence against women, forced in child marriage, and so forth. I'm not sure if that's part of the stated agenda. Is it?
Christiane, is it?
No, it's not part of the conference is literally to celebrate the life of Prophet Muhammad and to stand by Prophet Muhammad against terror and hate.
But don't you think, Christiane, that this is the timing is not really terrific in light of the fact that, what you've got is Boko Haram in Nigeria and in northern Nigeria and in Pakistan, and you've got all these attacks.
But hang on a minute. Yes, of course, but listen, these conferences were organized half a year ago. And what have they got to do with these terrorist acts?
Well,
we must actually show
you're talking
the
about
real
Islamophobia, and as though the Muslims are the victims here. Aren't the victims the people who are being killed by Muslims?
Yes, absolutely, but Muslims get killed by these terrorists too. Don't forget, in the Middle East, hundreds of Muslims get killed every day by ISIS. We have a problem in the world, and we need to work on this together, Muslims and non-Muslims.
So, go ahead, Raquel.
Thank you. If I may then, recognizing that the theopolitical ideology that seeks the subjugation of every individual who respects and values individual liberty, including yourself and myself, Christiane, is the exact thing that in this moment we should, even if we've planned something in advance, say, look, there is this issue that's on the world stage. We know that everyone's going to be looking at us at this point, and look at who is at the table, and as well as who is not at the table at that conference. There was one female who is keynote speaking. That is yourself. I wonder about where the dissident American Muslim women are to speak to American Muslim youth about this issue.
My friend, you obviously
am I because I have. But I am not, but I have internet access. Excuse me, why are you interrupting me?
Christiane,
hang on, let me tell you, I was there. Yes, I was just there. I just came from the conference. Let me tell you what went on. One lady who's a community leader won an award. She was the only one who won an award. The presenter is a woman. In fact, the two presenters are women, and I was the keynote speaker as a woman.
Okay, let me ask you this. Ladies, let me ask you this. There are reports a woman was stoned to death for adultery. Is this allowed by your religion, Christiane?
Is that allowed by what?
Your religion.
It's...
Yes or no?
You know what? Stoning to death comes actually from the Bible. I don't know if you know about that, but it comes from the Old Testament.
Raquel, what's your response to that? Raquel?
Okay. So that's a cop-out response.
Stop, Christiane.
Of
Raquel?
course, no.
Raquel,
I'm not in favor of that.
You did answer it, Christiane. Raquel?
No, I'm not in favor of that. Are you?
No, I'm not asking you, Christiane. Raquel, can you please respond?
Adultery,
Christiane,
is punishable for both man and woman.
Go ahead, Raquel.
Regardless of whether or not it's punishable by both men and women, we have to own up to the fact that, for myself, for example, stoning, lashing, any kind of capital punishment for something like that is not something that I believe in. That's something most Muslims I know believe in. However, we have to acknowledge that there is a particular interpretation of our faith that believes in that, and we have to be at the front lines of fighting that.
Christiane, Raquel, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for
All right. The president of Egypt called on the leaders of Islam to eliminate the radical element. So, with so many Muslims being killed by ISIS and the violent jihadists, why won't the leaders of the other Arab countries do the same? With me now is former U.S. Ambassador to the UN and Fox News contributor John Bolton. Good evening, Ambassador. Why won't the other Arab countries join in what seems to be a reasonable approach by President el-Sisi?
Well, in fact, what el-Sisi did was, I think, really quite courageous to make a public statement that Islam needed a revolution. He gave it at Al-Azhar University, which is the center of Islamic scholarship in Cairo. And he coupled that with something I think is equally significant. On the Coptic Christian Christmas Eve service, he went to the main cathedral in Cairo and wished the worshipers Merry Christmas.
Right.
Said we're all Egyptians together. So like Anwar Sadat going to Jerusalem, it's a very, very amazing couple of things that el-Sisi has done and puts him in jeopardy. What we should hope is that other Muslim leaders, particularly in the Middle East, do follow his example, but it's open to question.
Ambassador, how does that put him in jeopardy?
Because he's now engaged in a battle with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt to see whether there will be a possibility of a free and open society, or whether the Brotherhood, as it almost did, will get control and impose its version of Sharia law. And, you know, it was the Muslim Brotherhood coming back to Sadat after he made peace with Israel who assassinated Sadat.
Exactly. Ambassador, I want you to listen to the difference between our president and British Prime Minister discussing extremism and what happened in Paris.
We're also going to keep working together on strategies to counter violent extremism.
We do face a very serious Islamist extremist terrorist threat in Europe, in America, across the world.
What do you think?
Well, I think the president has rejected the idea that there's a war on terrorism to begin with. And going back to his Cairo speech, which was also co-sponsored by Al-Azhar University in 2009, he mistakenly believes that if you call it Islamic terrorism, you'll be insulting Muslims around the world. He should really talk to President el-Sisi, who is even, your former guest recognized, Muslims are perhaps the principal victims of Islamic terrorism. So I don't think they would view themselves as being insulted by the president telling the truth about what the reality is.
All right, and given the recent attacks by so many of the radicalized Muslims, what is the problem with identifying the enemy? I know these are the facts. You can go on and on, whether it's Al-Qaeda in the peninsula or Ansar and Sharia or Boko Haram. I mean, who are we talking about? Who has done all the attacks other than the Islamic extremists? Does that make you angry?
Well, it does, but, you know, I think what it shows is not only is President Obama's worldview wrong, his whole approach is patronizing to Muslims. And I think it inhibits our ability to talk honestly about how to deal with the problem, because I think these extremists who are religious fanatics, and let's just say it plainly, every religion has religious fanatics, if you can't talk about them as Islamic extremists and understand the ideology we're facing, you can't have an effective counter strategy to it.
And, you know, we talked about that. It seems that we're just not winning. Ambassador John Bolton, thanks so much for being with us again.
Thank you, Jeanine.
All right. And coming up, apparently joining a terrorist group is not enough of a reason to lose U.S. citizenship.